Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to Drawing Down the Stars. I'm Snappy, and today I'm joined by my good friend Graham. How's it going, Graham?
I'm all right, thanks. How are you?
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm really excited to be here today. We're going to be talking about a really interesting project that you've been working on. It's sort of a reimagining of an earlier poem that we discussed called Belial, as well as some other new additions. And it's this work called Chaosmos. Can you tell us a bit about this? What's the inspiration behind it? And yeah, what it's all about?
Right. So, as we talked about in the Blood of the Soul episode, I was working on a new collection, Belial, to include in that anthology. And I was getting very frustrated with how it was coming together. So, I decided to take a step back for about a month and a half or a month and finally came up with the idea to reconstruct it as like a zine with sort of marginalia style illustrations.
What do you mean by
And
marginalia? Just for people who
so
may not recognize that word.
right, so it's a term to describe illustrations within the margins of books. These were this was very common in the medieval times. And especially from and yeah, so it's very common in medieval times. You see it sometimes now, but not as often. And so it's sort of like there's a text, and then around the borders of the text there's like little images to sort of illustrate the concepts.
Cool.
And so I thought I would to restructure Belial this way. And the more I was working on it, the more I was feeling, this title Belial doesn't really suit the the direction that it's moving in anymore. It's not as hopeless. And so that's when I stumbled across the term Chaosmos, and I read a little bit more about it, and that just pulled everything together and tied the
So
whole concept in.
explain this to me because this is the term I've heard bandied about a few times by a mutual friend of ours, Mandy, and some others. It's like a literary term. What's the origin? What does this mean?
So, surprisingly, the origins are traced back to James Joyce in his work Finnegan's Wake, from which he published in 1939, but worked on for about 17 years. And I have his definition here. He defined chaosmos as a cosmos at the verge of chaos, one that is surging towards the exciting possibility of going out of existence, struggling onward at the edge of the existential abyss.
Oh wow.
And this definition this term was co-opted by Deleuze and Guattari a little bit later, and they put a bit of a different slant on it. I think Mandy would know more about that aspect of it. I love Deleuze, but I'm not as well versed in that aspect of his writing. But it's come to represent sort of the cyclic dance of creation and the constant universal movement between chaos and cosmos, between disorder and order, between harmony and dissonance. And it's this perpetual dance between these two states.
The churning of the ocean of milk, the cosmic dance of Shiva, right? I see so much in this kind of interesting, that dance between being and non-being, right? Or like I've been reading Dune. Oh, again, just looking at it because everyone keeps bringing it up to me. And the deep mystery in Dune, the secret of the Fremen is that they dance with the worm, right? They dance with the chaos and are evolved by it. They become their best selves through the struggle, right? Struggle and overcoming of natural reality and always existing in perpetual change, right? The chaosmos is similar to these concepts, this dance of being and non-being, that creation, that duality, that harmonizing, the great chorus, right? Another thing with Bacchus and Venus is like Dionysus is the chorus leader, and he leads you in that flow, following that drum beat. And the drum beat is that pulse of the universe, right? The great mother.
Exactly. As Bradley McLean put it, he's a scholar that Mandy tipped me off onto. He says, "We discover that a tragically predictable cosmos is really a chaosmos brimming with potentialities."
Beautiful, right? There's always a new possibility. Amazing. A new way to create the impossible. Love it. All right. So let me bring up your cover here. So this is the cover for the zine. Can you explain what's going on here? It's quite incredible and striking.
There's a lot going on. So we have the dichotomy of night and day that are sort of merging in the middle of them, in the middle of the image. The blue and the purple start to overlap to show that one blurs into the other in an endless cycle.
Wow.
And then we have the main figure in the center, which would be the perceiver. In this case, maybe me, or it could be the reader. And I've created sort of like, I've used an X-ray style of drawing. You see this similar in a lot of North American indigenous culture, as well as in Artaud's drawings, where there's an image within an image.
Okay.
And so we have the person's external world, and their third eye is being opened. And then inside them is this perpetual battle between a demon and a snail. And the reason I have the snail is because basically it was a common medieval image to have in these marginalia, which especially in France around 1290 to 1310, you would see knights fighting snails. And there's much scholarly debate as to what the snail really represents. Some think it could be fortitude. Some think it could be a reversal of class roles. There's much debate over this. And so I just thought it was a very interesting image. I always loved this idea of these knights fighting these giant snails. And so we have the knight fighting the snail. We have one of his demons that he's battling. His sword is broken, as we can see, but he's still fighting.
Wow.
You know, he's fighting to the end. And on his shield, we have the psilocybin mushroom, and has opened up his third eye. And he's using this as like a shield or a weapon against these beings.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful. You see those kind of themes in a lot of different art. And I keep thinking about this idea of the snail. Immediately, I think of the purple dye, right? The Tyrian purple, which is said to be an ingredient within the theriac, within the christening oil, the entheogenic version of this, right? So battling the snail seems to me to be very intense imagery, you know?
It's no secret. It's no coincidence that it's bound in purple ribbon. It's hard to see in the lighting here, but I've used purple as the binding ribbon.
So that was intentional on your part. Love it. Amazing.
Definitely. And then in the sky on the left, where my name and the title is like the new moon to represent a new phase or a new cycle.
Oh,
and
wow.
then we have the Sol Niger, the black sun on the right, which is a more maybe image people would recognize.
Yeah, right. The solar anus, you know, the solar negra, like you said, right? Central alchemical image of transformation, in recognizing the, the duality of that sun. That the sun is, it produces growth, but overproduction of growth produces excrement, right? you know. And it's also two sides to the solar image, right? On one hand, you have Apollo, the sun in the day, and then on the other hand, you have Dionysus, the sun in the underworld, right? That transformation through that decay, right? Dionysus is also representative of that psilocybin mushroom that grows out of the filth, right? Connected to this solar anus. Wow. Okay, let me continue here.
Sure. So these are just the definitions of Chaosmos that I had. I've already recited them, so we can keep going. So this is the first poem in the collection. This is "To know its name is to be insane."
Wow. Intense.
These hexes I've cast have not, alas, banished demons as I'd hoped. Soul on fire, mind is dire, as I stand holding a rope. This verse, though trite, will shed some light on the reason for this trope. This thing that haunts me can't be uttered, shan't be muttered, lest I'm ushered deeper into hell.
Wow. It's very interesting. I keep thinking, okay, with that title, to know its name is to be insane. This really makes me think of grimoire magic, and a lot of people don't understand, or they do, but they don't necessarily recognize 100% what's going on. The act of perception is a violent act. To call someone by name, to bind them to the earth, you're giving them form. You're giving them image. You're making them defined. You are holding them within time, right? This is this deeply Saturnian binding magic. This is what you see in a lot of these grimoires. To invoke by the name is to define. It's to look, and to look is always a violent act, right? It's an act of binding. But at the same time, when you describe and you look upon something, you have given it form. Now your demons are materialized. They are realized in form and in place and in structure, and they have a physicality from which they can harm you, right?
Exactly. That's exactly the concept I was going for behind this. The title is also inspired by a line from an Artaud letter to one of his friends. He says, in my life there was a dark thing that one cannot speak of without being considered insane. And it's a similar aspect of, the true torment of my illness is something that when I talk to people about it, you get the blank stare because they don't really know how to respond to the depth of hell that I live in every day.
And there's always this weird thing too about not confronting evil and not confronting fear, and to obscure that which is frightful behind euphemism. You know, one interesting linguistic thing that I read a few years ago was that the word bear, right, is one of these euphemisms, so you don't use the actual name. Right? Because to call a bear by its name would be to invite ruin upon you. So the word bear is actually just a stand in for something else.
Interesting.
But you see this often where something becomes so obscured and hidden through euphemism that it's completely lost, right? But also to give something a name and to be embraced in it is also to be exposed to it so brutally, right? This is the power of language and degree. I often think of, I talked to Mandy about this quite a bit, is George Carlin. He has a really amazing skit on euphemistic words. And he goes through the history of PTSD. And he talks about how in its earliest stage, right, when you first get it in the Great War, it's shell shock, right? And then it is, by the World War II, it's battle fatigue, right? And then finally by Vietnam, when they're trying to obscure and hide everything through that media lens, it's post-traumatic stress disorder, And then all of a sudden people can forget about it. And it's no longer that visceral. It's no longer shocked by the shelling. It's no longer connected to the violence, but hidden behind the medical language. Even though that medical language serves a purpose within a medical context, within the media context, it obscures and removes the true image, right?
Very well said. Very well said.
So interesting things to think about when you're talking about names and how names ascribe something or don't ascribe something, right? And the power of meaning. It's all magical.
Here we have this piece is actually lyrics for my band, the Isosceles Infection. I just really liked it, and I wrote it around the same time, so I wanted to include it. This is Dream Eater. A million years of fractal hunger trace the shape of my despair. It feeds off my dreams. Each path leads to ruin. Emaciated and insane, my eyes are lost in its gaze. Life is an illusion, eagerly devoured.
Oh, wow. what are you getting at with this? Like, what's the essence to you?
So in this context, my mental illness is the dream eater. It's sort of deconstructs and devours many of my passions and ambitions in life constantly,
Yeah.
by causing mental instability, the inability to focus or follow through with certain projects or school or occupations. um Very much a homebody. I'm at home, and when I'm inspired and have the focus to work on projects, I do. Otherwise, it's a pretty vacant existence of contemplation and fighting these mental torments.
Wow. Such intense energy, right? The fact that mental illness can consume your imagination, and prevent you. We often forget, right, that dreams and that ability to imagine is fundamental to moving through reality, and to having joy, and to bringing about what you desire. And if your dreams are constantly preoccupied or fixated or distracted or consumed, right? Oof, that's brutal. Then you have a disconnect from self, right? And you have a disconnect from your ability to move into the future.
Exactly. Disconnection from the self. That's a very good way to put it.
Wow. Powerful imagery, Graham. And I love this kind of, it's almost like a ghost genie nymph.
Yeah, a specter, I guess.
Freaky. All right.
So this is Womb Tomb. Primordial blackness. Queen nothingness bleeds creation, for she is a womb. Pain, mirth, queen nothingness absorbs creation, for she is a tomb. The gaping void existence passes through from phase to phase ad infinitum.
Oh, wow. Ad
So this
infinitum.
is, sorry.
No. I was just saying that. I love that word. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's great. This is Chaosmos in a poem, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we have the womb on the right with the afterbirth issuing out, or it could be a doorway with light pouring through that you enter through when you leave creation.
Why not both? Right.
Why not both? Exactly.
And this is that kind of, to me, lately I've been really fixated upon the Hermetic axiom. I read it in literal translation, and it just hit me a lot harder, like translated from the Arabic. And it is, that which is above is the same as that which is below. The same, right? Not as, the same, not like, the same, the literal, right? This realization that death is that awakening, right? It's kind of this fundamental thing that a lot of people miss. I really see it when you break down, like, I first came to this realization when I was getting into Buddhism years and years ago, when I was studying, and I was studying Sanskrit, and I came to this word nirvana, and it means to extinguish or to blow out the light. What is left when you blow out the light? Think about it. There's only the black. There's only that gap, right? And it's such a spooky it's a spooky and also incredibly enlightening image, right? It's like it's just it's intense, right? It's womb and tomb, potentiality and nothing, all at the same time. Wow. I love this one, Graham. This is beautiful. Really, really, really beautiful.
Thank you.
And the womb is a gate. You pointed that out. It is a gateway, between worlds.
Exactly. So this one is called The Great Denial. Several treatments barred from me due to my diagnosis. Are people with schizoaffective disorder less important? Left to scour the alleys for scraps of anything that could be construed as love. We slowly die. there was no place for us in this world.
Oh, wow.
So I was feeling very frustrated when I wrote this poem. For those who are new to this whole spiel, last year or yes, it would have been last year, beginning this year, I was finally referred to a treatment center, and because of my diagnosis, they barred me from many of the treatments that could have been offered to me due to the fact that they are research trials.
Yeah, they're still experimental.
Yeah, so they have strict diagnostic criteria, and because of the psychotic nature of my disorder, I was not able to get many of these treatments. And the only treatment really that's been known to help, electroconvulsive therapy, was not successful. And I've been quite frustrated, and it's back to the medication trials again. I'm on my 20th medication that I've tried, and so far not so good, but we'll see. I'm trying to remain hopeful.
And it's just wild to me too, because we've talked about your story several times and several different aspects of it. And it's like, I remember before you even got to receive the electroconvulsive therapy, that you were waiting for months and months and months, and this was like the amount of loophole, of the amount of things you've had to jump through, hoops you've had to go through, things you've had to do just to get your diagnosis, then to receive the treatment, and then for the treatment not to work, right? And then to be back at square one when you read about all of these potential successful treatments, but the Canadian government says, yeah, but even though those are successful, it's experimentally successful, and we won't risk it on someone. And it's just so insane at this point. Like, what are you supposed to do, right? I don't mean to rant for you, but it makes me upset as your
No,
friend.
it's quite absurd. There is a potential to go out of province for one of the treatments, but that'd be astronomically expensive, and that's just not feasible for someone like me who's on disability. I barely make enough to live, so
Incredible. We really mistreat those who need mental assistance, right? And especially those who are indeed suffering, right, with ongoing illness. We can do so much better as a society. Very, very powerful poem, Graham.
thank you. So this next poem is I'll explain it after. This is psilocybin. Sacred geometry revealed in technicolor. All hail the great mushroom, for its ancient magic mitigates the powers of the suicide king. Yes, for the first time in my life, his grip has slipped from my brain, and it is wondrous. Where ECT failed, psilocybin now prevails.
Wow. Tell me about this. This is clearly based on experience. What's going on?
Yeah. So I've experimented with psychedelics at many points in my life at varying doses, from microdose to absurd amounts. And the microdosing I found never did anything for me. I didn't feel any effects either in the immediate or afterwards. And when I did large doses, it was extremely mentally destabilizing for me because of my schizoaffective disorder. And on May 17th, I hadn't touched psychedelics in a long time, several years, but then the opportunity was presented to me again on May 17th with a friend. And I said, maybe I'll take 2 grams. I've never tried taking that dose before. A little bit more than a microdose, a little bit less than going into another dimension. And it was a very pleasant experience, as it usually is on moderate doses. But what profoundly struck me was the fact that for about 3 weeks afterwards, no suicidal thoughts at all in my brain, and I had been having them constantly, nonstop, daily since I was about 8 years old.
Oh my gosh.
Um, I was also in a manic episode, so it's hard to say if the two are related. I don't really know. But it was a very profound experience for me, and I just wanted to capture the beauty of that moment. You know, for these 3 weeks, I was able to experience this profound calm in my mind, and I was able to engage in, some artistic creation healthily. I was able to engage in some social engagements healthily. And it really was a positive experience for me. I don't know if I'll do it again because I don't want to exacerbate my manic episodes. But this brief period I wanted to capture in a poem.
Wow. Yeah. And it just reminds you too how powerful this kind of medicine can be, right? And it's both good and bad, in the fact that it can one hand help you with your suicidality, but on the other hand, it potentially can aggravate your mania. So it's like,
Exactly. And psilocybin treatment is offered at this treatment facility I was referred to, but again, because of the psychosis, they were like, "Oh, we don't want to risk exacerbating or initiating a psychotic episode." And so the treatment was barred for me. But there is a lot of research in the therapeutic effects of psilocybin in treatment-resistant depression or suicidal ideation and PTSD.
yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible. We need to really re-examine these plant medicines. I've spoken often about some of the profound effects I've personally had on psilocybin. I do believe it is something that needs to be taken with caution and to be
Yes.
deeply, deeply respected. And you really have to know yourself and your own body. But it is something that, for the right person, for the right mature person who can take this seriously, it can be deeply, profoundly rewarding. But again, it is not something that should be just trifled with,
The
as I
entheogenic,
with all plant medicine, to be honest.
the entheogenic path should come with a big caution sign,
Right. Right. This is something, I've talked about a few times, but it cannot be stressed enough. The entheogenic path is dangerous. Okay. The rewards are high, but the risks are high. And this is for a path of people who can be in control and who can be disciplined. Right. And so often you see this pattern. I was talking to a person earlier today, and I mentioned this. This is an ongoing pattern where people have a profound experience. Maybe they see divinity, right? And then all of a sudden, they're engaging with entheogens 7 days a week, and then their lives are never the same. And I've seen that way too many times, Or people, classic one is Crowley himself, right? He writes about this. I am powerful. I am in control. Nothing can overcome my will. Well, we saw how that played out. We saw how that played out. You really have to be very careful. I'm never going to tell people not to do this kind of stuff because it is rewarding and it is beautiful, but it requires maturity and respect and dote and antidote, restraint,
Absolutely. Well said.
Let's continue. Sorry to turn that into a PSA, but
No, it's important. It's important to talk about the risks.
right.
So this is Beguile. Arcane staves shatter my blade, but I still have the weapons of my breath. I spit curses, I breathe incantations, I violate this false reality which beguiles and ensnares us all.
Wow.
So this brings us back to the broken sword imagery on the cover of the collection.
Right, with the demon.
He's battling the snail and the demon and the knight's sword is shattered, but he's still fighting. He hasn't given up. He has other weapons at his disposal of a magical nature, perhaps, with the breath. The power of the breath is very important, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, right. You see that, we know your background, and the breath of God animates the dirt, right? in the Bible, there's a lot of profound imagery with the breath and the wind and all of this stuff. Deep magic, I see that for sure. I keep thinking of this idea of beguiling, right? This to me screams Gnosticism. You know, there's this image that the earth is this beguiling mistress, right? We see this also in some of the mythology of a figure like Attis, right? He's beguiled by the nymphs and bound in matter. He perceives the feminine as only through the lens of Eros. And it is only when they invoke the beast and they rise out of the mud and go through that divine transformation and learn to become and love the goddess that they can perceive the feminine with love and can abandon that hateful lust, you know, and be freed from matter. But intrinsic in this is this idea that matter itself is beguiling and has to be broken free from, you know?
Exactly. It's and when I'm referring also, you know, this false reality which beguiles us. I'm referring to the veil that can be put over our eyes when we're overcome with pain.
Yeah, wow.
You know, pain can control us, or it can inform us. But quite often we see people walking around and they're victims of their own pain. You know, they're wearing this mask that isn't really them. And in a different page in the collection, there is a mask that says agony, and it's cracked and breaking apart.
Wow.
Because it's a perpetual cycle of the pain enveloping us and then giving way to something new.
And pain is such a difficult thing, you know. Many people cannot handle pain, and if you're in extreme pain for extreme periods of time, people start to act in desperation, and it can utterly transform a person's entire personality. Like you were saying, it can reshape or break people. Pain is such a difficult emotion to bear, a feeling, you know, a reality. And it is something that we all have to contend with at various points in our life, you know?
Definitely. Something that I do that I've talked to Gast about as well is for those able to handle it, it's like a mental focusing and amplifying of that pain in your mind and your being until it becomes so overwhelming that it breaks away into a profound calm.
This is the essence of the left-hand path in many ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
Engaging with that profound negative and being in it and experiencing it and transforming that experience when pain can become pleasure, right? When that which destroys us transforms us. This is, alchemical act. That's deeply powerful magic if you can do it. But it, like you said, you have to overcome the pain. You have to go through it.
You have to have the strength to wear the armor, as I've said before.
Right? Yeah. You know, I often think too of, it makes me think of, there's these rituals to Dionysus where you'd see these women and they would walk through, sometimes queer people, they'd walk through the fire with bare feet and they dance purposely in the fire as a sign of test, as a strength. And when they got out of it, they believed that they were blessed and that they would be able to overcome. You know, or I think of in India, you see a lot of these type of rituals, like to the there's a god Skanda or Kartikeya, who is the brother of Ganesha, son of Shiva, and is a war god or god of, like, you know, battle. And you get this whole thing where in a lot of the rites to Kartikeya, his followers will put hooks in their back and will pull chariots with their skin. Will do these extreme acts of physical overcoming of pain, you know? Or I think of my personal experience. I was around these sadhus in Mumbai who were called the dancing bubbas, right? And you'd see their legs or their arms atrophied from refusing to sit down. And it's just the incredible amount of pain that these people are going through. And you'll see them rocking back and forth, dancing and chanting and smoking these chillum pipes all day long. And then they'll hang themselves from these ropes so that they don't have to sit down. But the pain is part of it, right? The pain is the point. they're inducing that pain upon themselves and using that pain to bring enlightenment.
Exactly. So this last poem that we'll read tonight is one of my favorites. It's kind of two little aphorisms in one. So I'll read them. I'll read one and then the other. This is the mystery. This agony is unbearable, essential, and soon I will be gone. Cycle of life, death, rebirth, eternal.
Oh wow! So you can read it two ways.
Yeah, it's sort of like a cut up poem in a way. So you could say this cycle of agony is life unbearable, or it could be this agony is unbearable, or just the cycle of life. It can be read in multiple ways.
Wow.
And then we have the fire, the transformative but destructive force.
Wow, that's really beautiful.
Thank you.
And you're right. You're right. You have to go through that death to be reborn, right? And you have to go through this in order to restart the cycle. There has to be this transformation in cyclic change. Wow, beautiful.
Thank you.
This was amazing, Graham. So, what do you want to leave us with in thinking about this particular collection, Chaosmos?
Well, more than one thing, I guess. On one hand, I want people to realize that through this dance of order and disorder, destruction and rebirth, one end is not really an end. It's just a step into something new, So if you feel like, you're frustrated with the loss of your job, yes, that's very stressful. The stress of financial insecurity is horrifying, but it's the chance to embrace something new and take a new path. And you could say the same with school, with hobbies or interests, with artistic passions. If you feel one door closing, probably you've already stepped through it and you're going somewhere new, right?
Oh, totally. I see that so incredibly so. Immediately, I think of, when I do a lot of tarot readings. I give people tarot readings all the time, right? It's my job. So oftentimes I get this energy. I'm trying to find the card here. There's two energies that immediately come to mind that both, when they come up in the cards, people react to viscerally. Okay. Well, we'll just do the one here. The Tower. That dragon energy that comes and destroys all that you've built and sets you back to beginning, right? And the Tower is unforeseen, right? This is that energy that you cannot prepare for, or you won't, or you haven't prepared for, that catches you off guard, that knocks you on your ass. And oftentimes when people see this, they assume it's the worst thing in the world. But almost always this energy is needed, right? It's needed either for you to learn a lesson and to change, right? Negativity forces us to adapt. Suffering forces us to adapt, right? If you don't, you have to overcome adversity, right? Or it ends a cycle, and it means that negative energy is moving out, right? It's almost always like these things are painful, they're difficult, but change, and it's like death always results in something new coming, like you're pointing out, and you have to go through it.
Absolutely. What was the other one?
The other card is the death card. I'm just having trouble finding it here. There it is. Okay, here he's showing up. Right, and the death card that's the inevitable end, right? If the tower catches you off guard, catches you unaware, you can't prepare. This one doesn't matter how you prepare. This one doesn't matter how much you kick and scream. You gotta go through it, and it's coming, and you see it on the horizon, and it has to be faced. It's that inevitability, right? This is the result. Like a lot of people have trouble with this energy because all that lives ends in destruction. But it's this cycle that allows for evolution, that allows for us to come together, to experience love, to experience adaptation, to experience change. That reaper, that Saturnian energy, it's not evil, it's purposeful. We've talked about this so many times, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Wow, and there was a line, right? Everyone wants the answers that only death can bring, but no one wants to die, right? It's a classic. It's that classic. Everyone wants to go to heaven, but no one wants to die. You know,
I love that.
right? And it's just it's a very true reality. It's a very true reality. You know, eventually you're gonna have to face it. You're gonna have to go through it, one way or another.
Yeah.
So, Graham, when is this coming out? When are you going to be releasing these? And tell us about how you're producing them, because there's an interesting little story here.
Yeah. So I'm making each of these by hand. Uh, all told, it's about 22 pages. Well, 12 pages double-sided. All hand-drawn, handwritten poems. So each copy is a little bit unique. Then I bind them with purple ribbon. I've made 5 copies. I've already shipped one of them out. So it's you can order it now. I'm making them. It takes me 6 or 7 hours to make each one, but I'm chipping away at them. There's going to be 20 total in this first edition. There will be a second edition with some slight alterations, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. For now, let's focus on the first edition. So there'll be 20. It's shipping out now. You can order it now. It's on my website, and it's been so fun to create. It's been a huge anchor for a lot of my manic energy that I've been suffering with the past while, and it's nice to see this project finally come to fruition.
And this is something I really love. I really love this idea that each piece is a totally unique, individual, personal creation with its own, positives and negatives. Each piece is slightly different than the previous one, just by nature of the human creative process. And in this, universe of AI and mass production, you're doing the hard work of and you're embracing your individuality and your own expression, not taking any kind of, you're just doing your thing. And I love that about you. It's this primal, visceral thing, and it's beautiful, and it's so personal and unique. It's not something that people get very often anymore.
It really isn't, in the Ottawa small press community, which I'm a part of, there are a couple small presses dedicated to hand making chapbooks still. Beautiful. And it's just wonderful, and that's really what inspired me to do this. I used to make my own chapbooks about 10 years ago, but they were very shoddy, and I've learned from then, and I've reapplied what I've learned.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah.
But yeah, so everyone, please go to the links below. You'll see a link tree for Graham, and you can find his publication house, Things in My Chest. You can buy all of his books, and as he was saying, you can pre-order this Chaosmos zine there, and you'll get your own hand-painted, hand-signed, individualized personal copy, which is just amazing. You also recently released new music with your band, Isosceles Infection. You want to talk about that for a second?
Sure. So we dropped our new release on, when was it? I guess Friday last week. It's called Dream Eater. It's about 27 minutes long, and it's like progressive metal. So there's some heavy parts, there's some trippy atmospheric parts, bit of clean singing, bit of screaming, bit of everything.
It was really good. I really liked this piece. I found it was very cohesive. I put it on and I just listened to the whole 28 minutes or so. Beautiful.
Thank you. We designed it to try to each track flows into the next, so it's one seamless listen.
It flows. It works. I feel it. So you'll find the Bandcamp for Isosceles Infection in Graham's link tree. Anything else that you're working on that will be coming out in the future that people should be aware of?
Yes. So our last talk was about the reprint of my collection Hidayat, which will be coming out in early July. I'll be reprinting that. That was my second collection from many years ago, but almost 10 years ago now. So that'll be seeing a third edition in the next few weeks. And the most important thing, I guess, still to keep hyping is my graphic novel will be released at the end of November through Syrup Moose Records.
So excited for that. I can't wait to get my hands on it. And we want to always support Syrup Moose doing really cool stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Also, this Saturday, Graham and I are returning with our podcast, Searching for Dragons. And we're going to be talking about Aldous Huxley's essay, The Doors of Perception. Do you want to give people kind of an overview of what to expect for that?
Yeah. So The Doors of Perception by Aldous Huxley is
Beautiful.
I love that edition. It's just a beautiful cover. It's about Aldous Huxley's first mescaline experience in 1953 and how it sort of transformed his perception of reality and his own self.
Beautiful. I can't wait to get into that because Huxley is one of the most brilliant authors I've ever read. And to have him speak on this kind of entheogenic path will be very enlightening.
It's
So
a fascinating read.
everyone, please come out on Saturday and join us live for that discussion. Also, after this, our good friends Mandy and Jevim are going to be doing a talk together on her channel, Occult Examiner. Please, if you have a moment, go hop over there and support Mandy and Jevim. Mandy's an incredible satirist, philosopher, artist, author, musician, chef, just an interesting, funny character. It's going to be a good time. So I will be there in the chats if you want to come say hi. Any last words, Graham, before we say goodbye?
Do not fear an end.
Wow. Don't fear the end. You got to learn to face it. Take that leap and jump, everyone. Peace and love, and we'll see you on Saturday with Searching for Dragons. Take care, everyone.